say, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. She is award-winning and best-selling author at the age of 16 years old and having a 30 books already, people. No other than Miss Shanti Hershenson.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome back, Miss Shanti. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Of course. So my name is Shanti Hershenson. I'm actually 17 now, and I recently just published my 21st book, which is a novel told in poetry about sharks, and it's called Pontus and Electra to the Depths of the Sea. But in total, I've written 37 books, and yeah, 21 of those have been published.
Miss Shanti Hershenson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Truly, you are empowering and inspiring to us. So let's talk about the writing process of all your books. What initially inspired you to write any kind of book and how the core idea evolved?
Of course. So I've really always loved writing. I know that's kind of that's the easy answer, but it's true. Is that ever since I was a little kid, I really loved going to the bookstore, and I loved looking at all of like the authors on the window, promoting like their upcoming book signings. And I used to like flip through books. I'd look at like the last page and see about the author, and I would just remember I would think like, oh, I really want that to be me. And yeah, it's really just been this love of mine that's persisted throughout my entire life. When I was a kid, I used to create these little stories out of like literally just like paper and markers or crayons. And yeah, when I was 12 years old, I set out to write my first novel. This was in the middle of the pandemic, and actually I feel like a lot of that novel, Biomlock's themes do really kind of fall under that like idea of like isolation. And yeah, since then I've just never stopped.
Never stop from that beginning, for sure. Do you prefer plotting meticulously or discovering the story as you write?
I'm definitely way more of a pantser. I love just sitting down and writing whatever comes to mind. And of course, though, as the story progresses and I have like at least a little more of an idea of how I want it to go, I'll end up adding just some bullet points, just detailing what I want to happen. Though I wouldn't really call it an outline. It's just more like notes for the things that I've discovered and the things that I want to like incorporate. And then sometimes maybe when I'm about halfway through the book, I at least have a solid idea of how it's going to end, but there are always surprises.
Surprises, for sure. And how does your daily writing routine look like, and how do you stay consistent?
Sure. So I write 1,000 words every single day. I've done 1,000 words a day ever since I was 12 years old. So it's been some time. And that writing the same amount every day has allowed me to build that habit and to just keep going, because now it's like it's more strange if I don't write. Like I don't remember. I literally do not remember the last time I didn't write. And in terms of more like at the daily level, I usually like getting my writing done in the afternoon if I can, though it's on school days, I usually write in the evening. And I'm very much a coffee shop person. I love going and working at coffee shops and getting all my work done in this ambient setting.
Miss Shanti, how do you overcome writer's block or moments when motivation disappears?
Definitely one thing that helps me is just the fact that I write every single day, because I've just really trained myself to do it. So that means like even if I feel unmotivated, I still like am very used to writing and I still will be able to write. However, when I find that maybe I'm a little bit stuck on a plot point, occasionally it helps to jump ahead and write something a few paragraphs down, or maybe just take a moment and like listen to music and just think about the story. Another tip for writer's block though is to try to figure out like what's stopping me, because sometimes I find it's like there's something that the characters are doing or something that's happening in the plot that's really not natural. and really doesn't make sense of the rest of the story. And if I can work through that, then it's much easier for me to overcome that writer's block.
Interesting answer, Miss Shanti. Interesting indeed. And what's your advice for balancing writing with a full-time job or other responsibilities?
Of course. So for me, I balance writing with going to school full time. So for me, what that looks like is I have a free period built into my schedule. Is about an hour and 20 minutes. And I utilize that to either get writing done or schoolwork. But on the days where maybe I don't have that or when I'm really, really, really busy working, I try to do after school maybe 30 minutes of writing and 30 minutes of schoolwork. Or maybe I do my all of my writing and then all my schoolwork, or my schoolwork and then my writing. And another thing I found is like making to-do lists of like everything I know I need to get done during the day and then sorting it by what's going to take like, sort of like the quickest versus what's going to take the longest. And then sorting kind of just going through based on that, like what I need to get done.
Yes, to-do list is very important, people, especially you are busy every day. Let's talk about the research and development, Miss Shanti. How much research do you typically do before and during the writing process?
It depends on the book. I have some books where it's like I need to really either I need to research the setting, I need to research some kind of plot point or something that I know needs to happen, or maybe I just have to sit there and try to like almost research within my own brain and figure out like everything that's going to happen in the story or things like specific to certain characters. But there are other times where I just have an idea and then just like that I just start writing. And there have been a couple times where I've had the idea that day and I've just sat down and I've just written it like no, no previous thought, and then sort of I just wait and see how the story develops.
And how do you organize research notes and integrate them naturally into your writing?
So when it comes to notes about my books, I'm not the most organized. A lot of the things when it comes to character information and plot points and just general like thoughts and ideas about the book, I have it all in my notes app and there is no particular order to it. Occasionally, maybe I'll have like things about the characters at the top and then the plots like kind of beneath that. But yeah, typically like my early like research and notes when it comes to a book just looks like an absolute like thought dump.
Have you ever had to pivot or rewrite major sections based on new insights?
Depends. There have been a couple times where maybe I'll realize like, "Oh, wait, I don't think that works," and I'll have to change something earlier, and then later I'll have to sort of rewrite a scene. Or maybe there's occasionally like I'll be writing and I'll have the characters do something, and then I'm like, "But that doesn't line up with something that happened earlier." So there are occasionally times where the plot sort of undermines previous things in the story, and I have to go back and rework that, but it's not common.
It's not your traditional work to do rewriting itself.
Yeah, no.
If it's done, it's done.
Yeah, and then there's the editing process, and then I've got to go and like look at it. But while I'm writing, not usually.
So, speaking of editing and drafting, how do you approach the first draft? Do you aim to perfection or just get the ideas down?
Yeah, for me, I'm much more a like for my first draft, just write whatever. Just get the words on the page. It doesn't matter like if it's coherent, that's for later. Though I will end up with drafts that are like a little bit cleaner. That's mainly because I do on occasion go back and reread scenes and maybe edit them. I'll write something and I'll be like, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if that fits. And in that case, then I'll go and I'll like rewrite the scene. So my books can be a mix of I have some sections that are just a lot more maybe sloppier in the first draft and some that are a lot cleaner. I have some books that are super concise on the first draft and I'm like, oh, this just made my job so much easier. And then I have some drafts that are very chaotic to work through.
Good kids, bad choices. Can you tell us about this book of
Of
yours?
course. So, Good Kids, Bad Choices is one of my favorite books I've written. It's also the longest book I've ever written. In print, it's about 900 pages. And on for the ebook, it will probably be over 1,000
Mhm.
pages. And it is this book I wrote that came from a lot of personal experience and observation about the world. It takes on sort of the idea of like politics in the school system, and then also just the experience of being a teenager in times that are very, very challenging. Right now, I'm releasing it simply just because it's so long and because I really need to see like what readers are thinking. I'm releasing it chapter by chapter on Patreon. But once that's done, I am absolutely going to publish it, whether it is 900 pages or only 700. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm also very nervous because it's just such a personal book to me. And
Yes.
yeah,
Personal, what do you mean personal?
I took a lot of my true experiences and put them into the book, which means like there are pieces of myself in all of these characters and in these stories. There are things that happen to the characters that happen to me or things people said. And that means that it has like I have this very deep connection with this book compared to some of my other books. I mean, it's definitely a contrast between a book that feels so real and then a book that's about sharks, if that makes sense. But yet, I mean, both are meaningful. But yeah, like I'm like nervous just because of how much of a personal connection I have to Good Kids, Bad Choices.
So let's talk about your latest book, Pontus and Electra to the Death of the Sea. What is all about?
Of course. So Pontus and Electra is a novel told in poetry I wrote, and it's about sharks. So it's a very strange combination. Yet I've heard from readers that it works very well. And initially, the book was never supposed to be as maybe emotional, and I don't want to say dark because it is in many ways a very heartwarming and sweet book. But yet there are some darker aspects to the book, and I didn't intend for it to be that way. However, as I was researching, potential like conflicts for the characters to experience, and like I was researching all of these different sort of terrors that happen to sharks, I realized that there was a very deep problem within how humanity treats the ocean. And in that, I ended up developing this narrative that is very environmentally focused and ends up being, or at least packing, a powerful statement.
Powerful is statement indeed. Is it correlation with the climate change or something else?
Yes, I'd say there are definitely themes of climate change and like themes of sort of I'm trying to find a way to describe it, like human induced destruction onto the environment. Without spoiling a very big plot point, it also deals a lot with the shark fin trade.
What's your editing process like? How many drafts do you usually go through, Miss Shanti?
A lot. So right after I finish a book, I usually push it aside for a little while and I try to clear my mind so I can approach it more so as a reader than as the writer, so I can try to disconnect myself from the story. Then very often what I do, it isn't all the time, but it is with most of my books. I usually get a printed copy of the book and I will read it without looking at any of my spell checker, without looking at it on my computer, and I'll mark down things that maybe I don't like, things that I like, things that are typos I've noticed, things that I could change. Maybe I'll write some new lines in the margins. And then once that's done, I transfer it over to a new draft where I approach it both with a list of things I'm concerned about and with the notes I wrote on paper. And through that, I reread the book again. I make the adjustments that I did in the previous draft, as well as consider anything that I might be concerned about or anything that I've written down to be like, like, hey, do I like this? And I'll find if some of my worries about the book are actually like real flaws or if they're just things that are kind of, you know, like in my head. And then after that, I'll work on it with my editor. We'll read through, make sure like the plot makes sense, make sure there's nothing sort of that I've missed. Occasionally, too, there are typos that I miss simply because I'm so used to reading the book as it is that I'll like not notice, these little things. And then after that, I usually do another proofread where I make sure everything's concise. I make sure there's no lingering things that I've missed or things that maybe I've realized like, oh, I actually do want to change that. And then after that, I format the book and I make sure like everything looks good. I make sure, especially with some of my books, they're maybe, for example, poetry or have a lot of like multimedia aspects like Little Green Man. I'll make sure everything sort of flows nicely together and I'll make sure that there are no weird formatting things.
Character and story development. How do you craft compelling characters that feel authentic and engaging?
Of course, I usually start out with almost like a sketch of the characters. I don't want to say sketch because I cannot draw. So really this is just like maybe a short description of them. I write down some notes of things maybe that they're like afraid of, sort of motivations for them in the story, what's keeping them going. And then I start writing, and as I write, I find I'm adding more details that just come to mind about this character. And by maybe the end of the story, I'll have this fully developed person that has also really been shaped not only by the ideas I've had before starting the story, but by the events of the story.
What's your method for building tension and keeping readers hooked in a narrative?
I love throwing my characters into really difficult situations. I love just really intense moments. I love putting my characters in just situations that make things so much worse. I have a lot of fun torturing my characters basically. But at the same time, I also build tension by creating these moments that feel real and emotional, and sometimes they're happy. And I feel like sort of a balance of all the emotions in a story can help almost raise it to like a different level just because it feels so much more real.
Hmm. Interesting, Miss Shanti. And how do you handle pacing, knowing when to speed up or slow down the story?
Ooh, good question. A lot of the time it comes naturally, but sometimes I'll question, like, have I spent too long on this plot point? Or sometimes I'll be like, like if I find myself almost getting bored, which it doesn't happen often, but occasionally I'll find myself being like, we need to move things forward. And sometimes this happens in editing too, where I'll look at the book and I'll be like, okay, so we have a lot going on in the first half, and then the second half goes super quick. So we need to sort of maybe add more. And sometimes it's, oh, like I need to take this out. Like, yeah, the scene is fun in theory, but it's really slowing down, and we're not really getting to that main point of the book. I had early on in my first book, I had a scene where these two characters go on a date, which was really nice and it was really sweet in building the characters and really sort of developing that relationship. But at the same time, I needed to cut it in half because it was like, okay, we have this moment, but we need to almost make this like a vignette of a moment rather than this actual whole thing. Because the book is not about these two characters going on a date. The book is about this planetary alien war.
And Miss Shanti, as award-winning and best-selling author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Of course. So, one of my long term goals is that I really want to see one of my books or more than one on the big screen. I think it would be so cool to get to see my characters visualized in this format that, first off, I've loved since I was a kid because, on top of writing, I really love watching movies. So does everybody. And I
Yes.
think it would be really cool to see all the different ways in which my books can reach like a new medium. I also want to get a PhD in creative writing because I think it would be so cool just explore what I love the most to the highest level and get to understand both like the rich history of it and all of like the little like intricacies and like magical aspects of it.
Well, good luck to your goals, Miss Shanti, and looking forward for more success.
Thank
And
you.
what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be, of course, like you?
Of course. So I have so many things. First off, I say it every single time. Try to write the same amount every day. Build that habit. It is so instrumental. At least for me, it has been the thing that keeps me writing every single day, that keeps me producing new books, and also feeling like excited to go back and edit the old ones. Also, another thing is don't let your age get in the way of doing what you love. Doesn't matter what it is, though for me, obviously, it's writing, is it's like if you feel compelled to do something, if you want to do something, there are steps you can take no matter your age to do that and get involved. I know I hear a lot of writers say they're too old to write a book. Like, oh, I missed the point, I should have done this a long time ago. No, you can do it. It does
You
not
can
matter
do
how
it.
old you are. And simultaneously, there are teenagers who are like, yeah, but I'm too young to do it. And at the same time, no, if you like to write and you have a passion for it, you can improve, you can write a book, and you can get published.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for that advice,
Of
Miss
course.
Shanti. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Ooh, of course. I have so many books I could say. I will say that my favorite book of all time is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And I think that it's such a great book for people to read who really want to like maybe write characters that feel very real because the main character, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, really doesn't, I don't want to say doesn't censor anything, but really shares so much information and you really get this well-rounded picture of the character just as opposed to the things that like are central, if that makes sense, or like
Yes.
you get to really read the positives and the negatives, and you also it's great for anyone who wants to write about really complicated social issues. I also really, really love Lee Bardugo's Six of Crows series. I think the characters and their backstories are so beautiful. And I think it's a really great lesson in both character building and world building.
Thank you for that recommended books, Miss Shanti. And what did you learn from the publishing process that you wish you've known earlier?
Ooh, I wish I could tell myself, especially like reviews are essential. And yes, they're scary, but you can't be scared of something that's A bound to happen and B super important. And I would really like try to tell myself to like early on try to get a circle of reviewers who can help like can review your book early, you know, they'll and then to get some momentum on the release day. And at the same time, I'd also tell myself that it's like, look, okay, there will be a time when you will cry over a 4-star review. Don't. It will be okay.
Yes.
4 stars is good.
4 star is good, people. You learn from those, well, criticism or whatever that they're gonna give you. Accept it and learn from it with ease. And Miss Shanti, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and law 101 and mental health 101 in each fourth season. Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Shanti, if you could give one recommendations to aspiring authors, what would it be?
Ooh, let's see. There are a couple different things I could say. I feel like don't give up because if you give up and you like, you know, if you like, if you're an aspiring author and you're like, oh yeah, but I don't want to do it, I can't do it, you know, I think I'm just gonna give up, then you're letting all of the doubters win.
Yes. Miss Shanti Hershenson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your books?
Of course. So my website is shantihershenson.com. That's ShantiHershenson.com. You can also find me on Instagram, which is at Shanti Hershenson, and TikTok, which is at Shanti Who Writes.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Shanti Hershenson because if you support her, for sure, more and more and more best-selling and award-winning piece to come. So, Miss Shanti, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.